training system. Okay, and your client may ask you to develop a complete uh, evaluation of training system for them, and it is better if you go with a plan. Although you can do evaluation on spot and as the client desires, but it is a good idea to have a plan. And developing an EOT system requires a number of things which are to be done even before you start evaluation. So it is a time tested system of steps, and I will just now share with you those steps. And then it is not that you have to follow all the steps. You can skip any steps that you think are not suited for that particular client, or you could be detailing more on one or few steps and be very brief on other ones, depending upon the kind of organization and kind of evaluation that you are doing. So let me share the screen with you, and we will go through the steps. So I hope you can see the PowerPoint slides on your screens. So these are steps in developing an evaluation system, and we will also cover writing an evaluation of training report. Like however great exercise you might have done, whatever analysis you might have made, putting it down into report is very important, because ultimately the people are going to see what report you are giving, and the report should not be too long. So there, I will be suggesting at the end of this session some format which you can adopt, and of course you can adjust it according to your need or according to the client's need, but more or less broad guidelines are there what to include and what should come after the other, like sequentially how it is best to be arranged. This is not the best format that I'm saying, but it is a very good workable format which people have already tested. So let us go about it. So evaluation system for information on an organization's overall training function, that is what we need to develop. So why do we need it and what does it do for us? It provides feedback to trainees, and it confirms the achievement of objectives of the training course. It proves effectiveness of training. If you remember, effectiveness is achieving the objectives of the training. If a training is able to achieve the objectives or the desired standard of performance that it wants to impart to the trainees, then it is called a effective training. If you have this system, then you can prove effectiveness, that yes, our training was good enough, and the data shows and the system shows. Then assess the competence of people who are working in the organization, exchange data with client organizations and funding agencies. Like if you have good reports and uh, good work done by you, then you can always exchange the data, and you can even make it as a precursor for next assignments. Establish quality assurance, improve efficiency of training provisions, and definitely you can monitor the training activities, how they should be done, how to go about them, and so on. And even the resources, you can make an analysis where we spent more, where we spent less, and what time we should devote to which activity that can be done. Now, you could be making the evaluation system for different people. It could be the training institution also who asks for it. So naturally, it should be more or less level 1 and level 2. And then you can be doing it for departmental management. For departmental management, there would be inputs from level 1 and 2 also, and level 3 becomes grossly important. That would be very important. And of course, level 4, if it takes a lot of precedence if it is for funding agencies. I'm not saying that you will be working only on level 1 and level 2 or level 3 or level 4 separately for these three people, kinds of people, but like the prominence in your report should be for such levels. If it is a departmental management, you will be covering the other levels also, but focus should be on level 3, that is the performance. And funding agencies, it will be more or less on the impact, the things that have helped the organization and how the organization has bettered itself over the years. So let us look at the steps, what the steps are. Now, the first step will be to examine the existing system. It is quite possible that the organization has a full-fledged evaluation of training system, or it could be possible that the organization in the name of evaluation of training has no system at all. These are two extremes, but there could be that they're doing some kind of evaluation also along with, say, the reaction level or the learning level, or maybe some kind of assessment at the performance level, job behavior level. So the first thing that you should note down is if there is any system, why do they need to change it? Why is it not working? Hmm? And why there should be a change, if at all? And then after discussions with trainers, clients, funding agencies, stakeholders, and trainees, you can come up with this. This could be the interview, this could be formal discussions, or this could be just through emails, or even if it is a large organization, maybe you can think of a questionnaire. Then you will be more structured, like a small questionnaire on which you will be asking them. Then identify the problem. What is the problem that is causing the required change? Like, why do they need the change? What is the problem? If that is removed, then will the system be okay again? Then point out the necessity of evaluation. This is very important, and here your role is much bigger. That why do they need an evaluation? Then we have step 2. You will have to look at the functional boundaries and then identification of key stakeholders. Now, functional boundaries are like what the organization does, what are the limitations on it, and how better it can be done. Is it dynamic? Is it changeable? Like they have some functional systems, whether they can be changed, whether they can be improved, or whether they have the some limitations. So the evaluation function should link into other functional systems also. For example, administration. Do they readily give approvals, or are there going to be problems if you ask for funds or if you ask for certain data from them? So that is what you have to look at. And then the logistics also. Will it be possible to, for example, the organization has many field sub organizations, and there will it be possible to do this? So these are the things that you have to link into other functional systems within training and development, both within and external to the organization also. So maybe there are competitors, maybe there are people in the market or the government policies that may affect their business. So link that, and you need to foresee also that maybe in future if this law comes, an organization, now that would be particularly specific to the organization. We cannot generalize for every organization the same thing, but yes, uh, for that particular organization, you should look at that. Then it is important to define the boundaries of the evaluation exercise. Like you may take up a task, there will be a limit of time. They may be asking you for a report for within 1 month, or maybe within 2 months or 15 days. So, how much can you do? So, you have to set the boundaries also. You cannot evaluate almost everything. If they are focused more on performance, then it is best to bound yourself with the level 3 evaluation. Of course, you will need help from level 1 and level 2 also, but that is what the idea should be, that we'll be focusing on performance. So I'm just giving you an example. Like it could be dependent upon, if it is a training institute, their focus may be different. So it is important to define the boundaries of the evaluation exercise to determine the internal systems needed within the evaluation of training function. What all systems do you need? For example, you need approvals by a certain date. For example, you need some help in the logistics. You need help in accessing to different officers within the organization. So what are the internal systems that you need? You must list them out. Then identify the key stakeholders. Mind you, key stakeholders may be many more than the senior manager or the line manager. There could be more key stakeholders who are or should be associated with the EOT function. For example, if it is for a sales training, then maybe you will have to include the customer base also as stakeholders. Prominent vendors, prominent peoples on whom these organizations depend, or from where the major chunk of orders comes. So also sleeping decision makers or gatekeepers of information. By gatekeepers, I mean that people may restrict flow of information from outside the organization, or they may be restricting something coming in, some information coming into the organization and being given to you. They may be sitting as gatekeepers. No, 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 this is not the information that we will give to the evaluators. So these are also stakeholders. Then identify external non-training systems which have an impact on evaluation, providing valuable information about things. For example, performance problems, introduction of new technologies, working practices, and changes to government policy. So what are the external things that affect it? It could be the performance could be low, not because of the training, but because of some external factors, some environmental factors, or maybe some policy of the government. So this you have to consider. So these are the things that will define your boundaries. And then the next thing that you need to do in the step 2 is clarify the sources of information about evaluation of training. This also means the being used to communicate this and the barriers, like how can you communicate the information sources, or how can you talk about the barriers, to whom you talk about it, and so on, which prevent it being used effectively, like which is making a hurdle in your work, or which is not letting you do your evaluation of training exercise. That should be, you should be able to communicate this, and how to do that, that is what you will need to think about. Then we go on to step 3. This is, you might think that this, why are we including this description of existing system and its analysis? Sometimes the questions are the answers. Like if you describe the existing system, then even the first step and the second step will be easier for you. For example, you have identified a problem. Then you can go into details of the problem, why it is occurring and what happened. So this is very important, describing the existing system of evaluation of training, what is there, and its analysis, why there is a problem and why, what you need to work upon. So you need to see people involved in training function will be knowing about their work, but not their colleagues. Actually, in today's environment, in organizations, we become so busy that we don't even know the work of the person who is sitting next to our desk. So you need to link between them. Like, if he does this, then this happens, and who are all in the line. So people involved in training function will be knowing about their work, but not their colleagues. So you tend to get a holistic view of the whole system. That means that you will have to see the colleagues' work also. So you need to put in a horizontal input. Horizontal means between the same level of people. For example, there are supervisors. So all the supervisors, one supervisor does this, the other does that. And also the output, like what are they giving it to the customer or going out of the organization when they're working, what comes out of their work, and the results that they get. Outcome means results, output means more or less the numbers they are putting out. For example, they are taking 10 decisions in a day, or maybe they are taking one decision in a month, and outcome is change or something that has happened because of that decision. So output deals more with the numbers and outcome deals with results. So you have to analyze all this. A vertical analysis showing different levels of the system. For example, from the chain, the lowest in functionary, he submits to the higher functionary, then that goes to the middle management and then to the senior management and so on. So a vertical analysis showing different levels of the system and the importance of the information provided. If you remember, we did a stakeholder analysis and that kind of thing was there. And so you can do it horizontally also and vertically also. So let us look at it a little more in that horizontal input, output, outcome analysis. Input is a training designer receives information about training needs. Now, this should be as a design brief that includes details of the number and variety of people requiring training. How many people require training? What kind of training do they require? What are their needs and all? And the aim of the proposed training. So, if we give this training, the aim is a very broad thing that we want this set of people to achieve this kind of thing. Thus, you need to document some of the actions. And following actions must be documented. A designer devises a training program based on the information available from the design brief, from training needs analysis, or obtained during the design process. Then the designer presents a design proposal based on the use of a distance learning package and on-job training to the client for comment and approval. It's not necessary that it has to be distance learning package. It could be the classroom training also. Training management, the clients, the stakeholder, and the funding agency evaluates the proposal. And then detailed design and development of the package are carried out, including procurement of training materials. Whatever they require, that is done. So this is all included in the input. Appropriate systems are agreed to evaluate key elements of the training program. So after that, in input, we agree, the client and the evaluator, they agree to evaluate key elements of the training program where evaluation has to be done. Trainers selected, trained to use the package and briefed on instructional procedures, including use of tools for evaluation. Then mentors are selected, trained if required, and briefed on their role and responsibilities and contribution to the proposed training program. Trainees are selected, briefed in respect to their participation in the training program and the means by which their progress and achievement will be assessed. Trainees are helped to learn and develop their skills through completion of the training package and on-job trainings. Output and outcome analysis. We need systems and tools which we use for evaluating output or outcome include comparing proposals submitted by designers representing different training providers, validating objectives stated for the training program with identified training needs, reviewing the utility of the proposed learning package, assessing cost implications in the development of the package. So these are the things that we use. And then we also use reactions of clients, stakeholders, mentors, and trainees to the proposed program. Assessing the competence of direct trainers being used to deliver the program, obtaining details of the number of people trained, confirmation that satisfactory performance has been achieved against agreed criteria. So now, what all do we need in vertical analysis? Based on a role analysis developed, like you can make an analysis of role of every level, identify the people you wish should contribute to evaluation, and help them analyze their role, and agree on the systems and actions you require of them. Naturally, you will need to be associated with these people, maybe individually or in a group. Like if they have the similar role, then you can have it in a group, or maybe individually if they have different roles. For example, number of people trained will be given by a lower functionary like section officer, but information about costs and benefits of a program from a senior level officer. You will have to balance what you would like to evaluate with what prudence and practical reality dictate. So you have to strike a balance between these two. You may be wanting to evaluate very much, a lot of things, but then you have to be prudent and practical things also, the time limit and the cost involved and whether you get the access or not, that also has to be seen. The systems and subsystems you describe in this step may prove disappointing and far less than you desire for effective evaluation of training. You're very motivated, you want to do it, you want to analyze, but there are people who are not giving you information. Maybe people are away and the time limits that have been prescribed do not allow you to do everything. So that might disappoint you, but don't get disappointed. But keep on doing good work and you find a practical balance. Now we have step 4. In this, we define key aims for this exercise. What are the key aims to do this exercise? That will actually give you a line, like a guidance. So fundamental questions can now be asked about existing system used within the evaluation of training. For example, why do certain systems or subsystems exist? For example, after taking the in a training institute, after taking the feedback from one course, it is compiled and then it is read out all aloud in the classroom. So why do we have this system or the subsystem of adding weightage to what the participants have said? So that may be a subsystem. So you can question, why does it exist and what benefit is it giving? What are the primary role and purpose? Why should we do that? I just gave you an example. It could be any other system. Given this role and purpose, what should be the means used for effective operation? How can we use it to plan our things or plan our activities, and how to do that? How far do these systems and subsystems match desired standards? Now the organization has a desired standard of performance. So are these systems meeting it? Naturally, they are not meeting it. That is why you are evaluating. So how far are they away from letting the organization get the desired standards? Then identification of new system or subsystem. If there is a new system, then you will need to develop that. And if there is a already existing system, could it be modified? So you have to identify it and identify new systems or subsystem and specify its purpose. Why should it be adopted if it is new, and what should be kept and what should be deleted, and why? Why? What is the purpose? Answering the first of these questions, that is, why do certain systems or subsystems exist? What are their roles and purpose? Given their role, role and purpose, what should be the means used for effective operation? Answering the first two questions of these questions help to establish the key aims for the evaluation of training function and its systems. Let's look at an example. There's a task of design of a training program. Now the key aim for this will be to ensure clients obtain competent design and development services from training staff, and for these services to provide effective and efficient training, leading to improved performance. So that would be the key aim. If your task is, if your work is to design of a training program, you want to evaluate that, then this should be to ensure clients obtain competent design and development services from training staff, and for these services to provide effective and efficient training, leading to improved performance. Now, why do we need improvement is answered by the third question. And what was our third question? How far do these systems and subsystems match desired standards? Isn't it? This was our third question. So, why do we need improvement is answered by this. The quality of training provided is poor. Trainees whose learning is based on the learning package report a lack of relevance to their needs. In addition, there's no evidence that it leads to improved performance. So that could be the situation. Mentors complain that learning study material does not help trainees to transfer their learning to improved job performance. The trainees continue to run similar programs without using internal validation measures. I hope you remember what are internal validation measures. The measures that evaluate, assess the learning or improvement in the trainees during the training. It is generally held at the training institution only. So the trainers continue to run the similar programs without using internal validation measures. So they do not have any internal validation measures to check the quality or relevance of the training. So they're doing it blindly without realizing that there could be some gaps or there could be some problems in that. So departments continue to nominate people for their training program without carrying out external validation to ensure its effectiveness. Now, if you remember, external validations are assessments done at the job performance level to know whether the training has helped in improving performance or not. Naturally, for this, you must have some data about performance before the training even began. So comparing that data, you come to know and whether what desired standard you wanted the trainee to achieve, has it been able to do that? Or if not fully, not 100%, that up to what extent? Could it be 70%? Could it be 80% or anything? So that is what So maybe the departments are continuing to nominate people for the training program without carrying out external validation to ensure its effectiveness. Hmm? Now, after we have done this, the fourth step, that is defining the key aims, what we need to do is we need to define key tasks. Key aim is a broader thing, as you read there, and key tasks are the actions or the sub points that you require to take up. So create systems that report on achievement of objectives and feedback from trainees. So you must have questionnaires, you must have reaction things, or learning logs or things like that, so that you can have feedback from trainees. It could be informal also, it could be interviewing, or you can even videograph what they said so that you can see later, look at their body language and see what is in their, like, try to guess what is there in their mind and what is the focus on. Systems to provide information about desired standards of performance or result of TNA. So these systems are required. These are the steps that you will be taking for definition of key tasks. System for providing that training leads to satisfactory performance or external validation measures. So if you notice, we are starting just when the training is happening. So get feedback from trainees, then match it to desired standard of performance or results of TNA based on the results of TNA. Then you need a system for providing that training leads to satisfactory performance or external validation measures. That is when they have come back to their jobs and they are already performing and some time has elapsed after the training. Then you have some assessment measures to see their performance, to assess their performance. Then you have tasks for improving the quality and relevance of training. After identifying all these, you can suggest the things that can be done to improve the quality and relevance of training. Then the next step would be monitoring training activities. It is possible that the organization spent more on food and environment of the training rather than the materials or the delivery of the training. So monitoring whether the money has been spent correctly on the correct things or not. So monitoring training activities and therefore making systems to prevent duplication of resources or having a TMIS. For example, it could be that you are researching and you are taking steps to develop a new system or a new way to teach something, but in a remote area there is already a trainer who is already training in such a thing. So and he has a very good time tested method of providing training. So a TMIS, that is training management information system, which has data to see where what is happening, can be used, and you can prevent duplication of resources. Same thing is being done on two places, or you're spending money on the same things at different places, that could be avoided. If it is a large organization, then a TMIS becomes a must. Then, after these tasks, the step 6 is to see the key information needs. What do we need? Based on the points raised in step 3 and other steps, of course, operational information about a client organization, departments, and individuals who need training, that needs to be collected. Problem prevention, solution information to provide accurate Financial information to report on the costs incurred and accurate amounts of finance, and in developing or running training activities, that is what you require. To assess the extent to which levels of performance have been improved against agreed standards. Again, I would say, like, is it 70%, maybe 65%, maybe 80%, and 85%, or maybe 100%, which is, of course, too idealistic to think about. In any organization, in any training, it is a very good training. In fact, I would say it is an excellent training if 85% of learning has happened. So then you need to do cost benefit information. You need that to calculate, and information about costs and all the benefits that have accrued from the training. You need to collect that cost benefit information that takes account of the above information, whatever is stated above, in relation to stated government policies such as training for all and value for money. All these things included. And then we go on to step 7, and it requires diagnosis of efficiency needs or identifying deficiencies. Where do we need to increase efficiency of people, and or in other words, where do we need to identify where we are deficient? We need to identify those places. So deficiencies can be identified by looking for variances. Now, variances would be, you have a particular standard of performance, but the variance is, it is performing at a lower place. For example, you expected sales of 40 products per week, but the salesman is able to sell only 25. So the deficiency is of 50. So this is just one example. It could be in anything else. I'm just giving this example to clarify. So deficiencies can be identified by looking for variances. A variance is a tendency for a system or part of a system to deviate from some expected or desired standard. You have kept a desired standard, but they are deviating from that. It is a weak link, a part of the system where problems occur, and variances can be either key variances or operating variances. Key variances could be the inbuilt problems within the organization, and operating variances could be maybe the salesman did not have enough time, or the customer base was too far spread, and the time in logistics did not permit him to spend get the desired number of sales. So these kinds of things are operating variances. Now, key variances are caused by the omission of a key task. For example, in a salesman's role, he did not identify the key or the USP of the product, unique selling price, why it is a very important, or why the customer needs it very much. So key variances are caused by the omission of a key task or one that is poorly performed. There's an example. For example, a key variance would occur if training needs were not identified before preparing a design brief. Excuse me for this noise. It is coming from outside my house. So let us say it again. For example, a key variance would occur if training needs were not identified before preparing a design brief, or starting to design training without having appropriate training needs analysis information. So that is a precursor. Like, unless you have that, you cannot prepare a very good design brief, isn't it? Operating variances are caused by flaws in the system being used, or are likely to occur due to flaws in the systems being used to run the training function. In this example, the training designer is dependent on the flow of information from a consultant, okay, or line department or beneficiaries. If this is deficient, the flow did not happen or the information did not come from the consultant to the designer, then it is lacking. So if this is deficient in some way, then the resulting design will also be deficient. Diagnosis and listing of key and operating variances can be done by identifying all those who have a connection to evaluation. It could be the senior managers, it could be the line managers, it could be the people themselves, or it could be client, customers, or it could be people connected with logistics, etc. So both within and external to the organization, this could be you need to list them out. Hmm? Now let us look at some of the examples. People are chosen for a training course without reference to their actual training needs. Randomly, just to send people to training, this happens quite often. Just send them, or people who are not needed in the organization, mostly they get a chance to get training. People who are in key jobs are never relieved for training. So that is a very bad practice, and it should not be resorted to. Training institutions, because they are unaware of training needs, design broad general courses, usually longer than is necessary. For example, something could be done in 3 days, but they took a full week to give training because they're not aware what they need, the training needs. Key variances can create this situation, which is only likely to change following appropriate evaluation of training activities. So whatever evaluation of training activities are done, they will be affected. Courses are run at a nominal fee without any relevance to the true costs associated with running them, and operating variance mismatch between the costs of the course and the minimal resulting benefits. The development of learning packages can be focused on subject content rather than identified training needs or operational utility. So we need to be very careful while developing the learning packages, and the focus should be on their training needs only, not what the trainer wants to put in the content or how to make the content interesting. It should be really matched with the needs of the people who undergo that training, huh, or operational utility. Training is designed without knowledge of the number and level of people who need training. Hmm. So if it is a large group, the number is more, then maybe you will have to share outlines of the things. And if it is a small group, then the training can be more focused. And sometimes the design is done without knowing that who needs this training, and the design is based upon the trainer's uh, what do you say, the view, or the trainer's own perception, or the designer's own perception. So that should not be done. It should be customized. Even if such a design has been made, it should be customized according to the needs of the people. So we will start with the step 8, that is diagnosis of job satisfaction needs. But before that, I want a break, and let us have a break of 10 minutes and we'll meet again, and we will just have 10 minutes break, take some tea or something, and then we will meet again. It's quarter to 11. We'll meet at quarter to, we'll meet at 5 minutes to 11 or so. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, students. So, shall we start with our program again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll just share the screen again, and it's a little elaborate, but these are the steps that we should take. And of course, based upon your organization, your client organization, you can skip the steps if you think. But this is a full, complete system that we can follow. All right. So we have seen 7 steps, and now we are on step 8, which is diagnosis of job satisfaction needs. Are you able to see the screen? I'm not able to hear you properly. Can you speak a little louder?
Yes, we can see the screen clearly.
All right. So shall we move on from here?
Please
Okay.
carry on.
Yeah. People's acceptance of evaluation of training is necessary. That is, like you will not be able to do your work if they do not accept your exercise. Huh? And people are likely to respond positively to proposals for improvements. That is, if it satisfies them, only then they will be likely to have a positive response to whatever you give them as a proposal. And so you need to diagnose the job satisfaction needs. What will satisfy them? Hmm? High job satisfaction requires feelings of competence, responsibility, and pride in work. Although the last part, pride in work, is like a little more psychological, and of course, even the responsibility and competence, this is more attitude based things. But people do find satisfaction when they feel competent, when they feel that yes, they are given responsibility, they are responsible for something, and of course take pride in work. Obtain data about these needs by questionnaires, interview, and discussion. It could be group discussions, or maybe you can just individually discuss with people. And interviews are, of course, very good because there you can see their body language also, and see the meaning behind their words also. Hmm? So you can obtain data about these things by questionnaire, interviews, and discussion groups to identify problem areas, like people discussing among themselves in the organization also is a very good idea. And here you need a lot of skill to design such a questionnaire, and preset questions for the interviews are important, and points of discussion that you throw in the group, that is also very important. So that should be done with care and accuracy, and then efficient delivery of training services in association with job satisfaction for those people involved. So based upon that, you can the job satisfaction needs, you can suggest the trainings or modify or suggest improvements in training. What you can ask is the extent to which a person believes that their expertise is being used effectively. Whether the training systems being used in their organization are suitable or not. You can ask such questions to them. These are only examples. Of course, based upon the situation, you can frame your own questions.
In the first line, excuse me, you have mentioned something as EOT. What is that?
Evaluation of training. Evaluation of training.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
So let us move on from here. Now, even in job satisfaction means the achievement of a good fit between job needs, expectations, and job experience. Job needs is people need something different from the job. They need a satisfaction that yes, I have achieved this. They have some expectations also from the line managers, from the organization, for facilities, for rewards, or anything. And their experience, what they have experienced till now. Hmm? So, five areas where there should be a close fit between a trainer's needs and expectation, those provided in the job by the employer. Hmm? So, there should be like a fit between a trainer's need and expectation and the ones that are provided in the job to the employees by their employer. So, knowledge fit. A trainer wants personal skills and knowledge to be used and developed. A good fit exists when trainers believe that the personal skills and knowledge are being well used and developed. Psychological fit. A trainer seeks to further personal interests. For example, to have a sense of achievement, recognition, responsibility, advancement in status, a good status. A good fit exists when trainers believe that personal interests are being successfully catered for. Efficiency fit. A trainer seeks an equitable effort reward bargain and acceptable supervisory controls. Trainers also need efficient support services such as information, technical aids, administrative, and supervisory help. A good fit exists when they believe that financial rewards are fair and other control systems acceptable. Also, that support services are efficient and adequate. Then there's a task structure fit. A trainer seeks a set of tasks to perform which meets requirement of the job and incorporates variety, interest, targets, feedback, task identity, and a realistic amount of autonomy. So, where will be a good fit? A good fit will be when trainers have the tasks and duties which meet their perception of their roles. Then, ethical, social value fit. A trainer seeks to work for an organization whose values do not contravene personal values. A good fit exists when trainers believe that the philosophy and values of senior management in an organization do not contravene personal values. For example, an organization wants to become a center of excellence, and the trainer also wants to develop excellence in his training. So there will be a good fit if these two match. Then, so you have seen in the earlier example, for example was for trainers, how to achieve the job fit. And then step 9 is anticipating further changes. Like you're making a system, but existing system may be prone to some other future changes also. So, a broad assessment of the demands likely to be expected of an organization's training function over a period of 5 years or so will indicate changes that will affect its training system. For example, there's a change in political parties and the governing political party. So, likely changes are maybe it is more business oriented, maybe it will have more restrictions on businesses. So, these are the things that one should cover. Typical changes could include introduction of new technology, changes to working practices, requirements to improve performance standards, increasing professionalism, changes to government policies, like I mentioned, gave an example earlier, efficiency initiatives, like the organization wants to change the bar of efficiency, like how much will be the efficiency to defined. Organizational restructuring also, the top management has changed. There was somebody who was very believed in more democratic leadership, but now there is somebody who is autocratic, or he doesn't give the staff side any credence or any opportunity to participate in decision making, etc. So there could be a change in organization or restructuring of the organization. Departments have changed, or some diversification has happened. Privatization of services also, like in many government organizations, steps are being taken to privatize or first corporatize them, and people expect that after 5 years they will be privatized. Step 10, specifying efficiency needs and objectives for new systems. So after studying all these things that are existing, we come to the objectives for new system and what are the efficiency needs. So you need to state the aims and objectives of your new system. Aims are actually intentions. What do you want to achieve by that? And objectives are measurable outcomes. For example, the participants, after the evaluation exercise, the employees would be able to do this or achieve this. Will be able to identify the training needs or whatever, training gaps, etc. So that are the small steps that you would need to write below the aim. Aims can be statements of intended improvements to the existing training system or developments for anticipated changes. These aims should be clarified into specific measurable objectives. Examples: efficiency objectives could be an average reduction in 5% in the length of training courses, 10% better utilization of existing training facilities, maybe more number of training courses, an increase of 15% in the number of people trained. These are the efficiency objectives that you can make. These are just examples. Job satisfaction objectives: clearly defined trainer rules, specific targets agreed, personal development planned. Like the trainers need to do this training after say 2 years, after 3 years, or so on. Examples of objectives: objectives to improve both efficiency and job satisfaction, utilizing in full principles of systematic training, devising a system for internal and external validation of training, helping line managers develop effective on-job training. Objectives related to future change: you can carry out TNA consultancy assignments in client organization, evaluate alternative or competing strategies in response to identifying training needs. Use cost benefit analysis to evaluate a particular training intervention. So these are the things that you can think of. There are other objectives also, like levels on which to concentrate EOT activities. For example, you want to limit yourself to level 1 or 1 and 2, or maybe you want to limit yourself to level 3. Short, medium, and long-term areas for evaluation of training can be identified, and action plan, like it could be like the training exercise would be for 15 days, but it is suggested that after 6 months, another exercise should be done. And then after 5 years, again, some exercise should be done. So you can plan it, make a calendar or something. Responsibility mapping can be done to clarify actors and actions. Development of evaluation of training tools, techniques, and procedures. So you will be using questionnaires, so you have to develop that. And maybe you do interview, or how you will go about it. These are the things that need to be developed on paper. Now then there is a step 11, that is developing the new EOT system. So at this stage, it is important to re-examine the conclusions drawn from SAPs 4 and 5. These answers the questions: what should be the key aims within the boundary of the evaluation of training function, and how do these aims differ from what is actually happening? What should be the key aims within the boundary of the EOT, and how do these aims differ from what is actually happening? Given these key aims, what should be the key tasks carried out within these areas? So you will have to write down small steps to achieve those aims. The key tasks associated with the aims now need to be examined in detail, as these will be the focus for development activities. So given our definition of key tasks in step 5, what are the operating activities, that is day-to-day or regular tasks that must be carried out? What are the problem prevention or solution activities that will result from the key aims and key tasks identified? So naturally, if you are identifying some key aim and key tasks, then what is the problem that would be addressed? What is the solution that you are going to provide? What coordination activities will be required within the area and between it and other areas? So whichever area you're working in, what coordination activities will you require? Will you require approval with the accounts people, the finance people, the HR people, the senior management, etc.? And if it could be other areas also, what happened in the reaction level, what happened in the job performance level, etc. You will have to coordinate that. What development activities will be necessary to keep the new system adaptable and in a constant state of improvement? It should not be that you started it, but it was like it blew up before it ended, or how to adapt it and how to keep it improving, even for future, how it should be improved. What control activities will be necessary? What kind of targets need to be set? And how can performance best be monitored? Should you appoint, should the organization appoint people within the organization to see that this is happening, or should the EOT evaluator consultant give time, say they will come after 6 months to see how it is happening, or may make another assessment after 1 year or so? Given the complex mix of activities, are there special skills required in some functional areas? So you have to think about that. Are there any key roles or relationships to which particular attention should be given in the development of new system? So do you need to redefine some roles, or do you need to give some more responsibility, or there are any key roles which should be attended to, which were earlier being neglected? So you will need to document everything, and a broad outline of the EOT function needs to be documented concerning working groups, individual contributors, and respective responsibilities. A more detailed description of the work of each of these groups and individuals, a description of how key aims and tasks from step 3 and 4 will be distributed between groups and individuals, and describe options, job satisfaction, advantages, disadvantages, efficiency, advantages, disadvantages. Does the option achieve the priority, efficiency, and job satisfaction objective listed in step 10? Does it also achieve all or some of other less important objectives relevant to certain groups or individuals within the EOT function? Technical options or improvements. Then step 12 means the detailed development. And you will have to write a detailed report and detailed plan how you will go about it. Clearly define trainer roles, establishing a trainer task inventory, interviewing trainers and others to analyze their existing role if we are doing it on trainers. Redefine roles and responsibilities taking into account organizational requirements, encourage them to redefine their role to make it more effective, identify their training and development needs. Consultancy in client organization, that is the other thing. Discussing performance related issues with stakeholders, interviewing beneficiaries to establish standards of performance, collaborating with departmental management to help improve performance, forming networks with specialists from other functions, planning multidisciplinary projects. Now the 13th step is implementation and action plan. Here we can only give you a broad guideline for both step 12 and step 13. That would be differing from one organization to another. What kinds of problems are likely to be encountered or implementation, and how can these be avoided or dealt with? That is what you have to be careful about in implementation and action plan. During the implementation period, what activities will have to be coordinated both within the area for development and with other systems? What training is necessary and how will this be provided? How much time is required for implementation and how can progress be monitored? So then it does not stop here. You must be thinking that we have already made the EOT system, we have created an implementation and action plan, but then there's something additional. A review process is a must. Once new systems are in use, their ability to meet all the objectives set for them during design and development must be tested. If the aim of the improvements was directed towards evaluating improved efficiency and improved job satisfaction, improved efficiency can be checked by establishing the extent to which key variances, systems, weaknesses effectively controlled, how much they have been controlled. If you're able to review them, then you can check them. Information on job satisfaction can be elicited from trainers, trainees, clients, stakeholders, or funding agencies informally or through a questionnaire. So that is to be done after some time. Review system can be periodical. It could be 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years. Naturally, you will have to give some time for the evaluation activities to happen and its effect to come to the organization. So, which of the functions, activities have been most successful or least successful? You have to write that. You have to see that in your review. Why it has happened? What are the functions' main achievements? What future challenges and opportunities are most important? What are the functional critical strengths and weaknesses? What principal conclusions for future strategy can be drawn from this review? So these are the things that you can do in the review. Now, friends, there is something called EOT report, which every evaluator has to make. So what I'm here suggesting is a general format that can be adopted. You can, of course, skip some of the things if you don't find them useful in your EOT report, but generally these are the things that are included. And it can be important. It's very important to have a EOT report because it can be a part of terms of reference. The client may ask you that you will be producing a report when you have finished your exercise. It contains information and recommendations that are needed for decision making. And then it helps you to document your findings. What you did, you can document that. And what you found, you can document that. Reports are formal, official documents. They are usually written using formal language. So be formal and do not be informal in that. Make it accurately, short and simple. Description. Use a style that is well structured and simple to read. A lack of jargon and using familiar vocabulary will help the reader's understanding. Of course, be tactful when describing problems and their causes and never be personal. Don't point out people. It should be described in a general way. Be tactful when describing problems and their causes because you need people's active, willing participation, not indifference and resentment. Help people to feel a sense of ownership of your findings and recommendations by including references and contributions by stakeholders, members of staff, beneficiaries, and customers, etc. So if they say their name that they have contributed in this way, then that will make them feel happy. Include examples likely to be of interest to your readers and use analogies to illustrate what might be a complex and sensitive situation. Your style should neither be subservient when dealing with senior people nor patronizing or authoritarian to others, subordinate to you. Use positive, objective, and direct recommendations based on substantive findings. Each recommendation should be a basis for action that is acceptable, practical, realistic, and motivating to all concerned. Of course, grammar must be checked and it should be correct. Initially, submit a draft report so that your stakeholders can comment on the content. This will enable you to allow for their views when carrying out a final edit. Now, what format I suggest is like this. First, you must have a title page. Clearly state the subject of the report. What is the report on? Also, references to stakeholders, associated client organizations, authors, and date. Contents, then you must have a contents page. List headings, subheadings, and appendices. Then you must have a summary of recommendation. It should come before only. People don't want to read the whole report sometime. So they go immediately to the recommendations and see, because more or less they know what is happening in the organization. So refer to numbered paragraphs in the text when you're making a summary of recommendation. Give particular emphasis to recommendations where these are described in detail. Then use a page for terms and abbreviations. Whatever abbreviations you use in your report, that must be stated. The report will include terms, abbreviations, and jargon unfamiliar to some readers. List these with a brief explanation. Then have a small introduction. The purpose of an introduction is to describe the reasons for carrying out the evaluation of training assignment. So you need to write down why you took up this exercise or this assignment and what it is intended to achieve. It may be appropriate to outline how information was gathered and what limitations, if any, were imposed. Then you must have a foreword. If somebody senior or somebody famous writes a foreword, that adds to the report. For some reports, a foreword written by a senior person can add authority and support to findings and recommendations. Avoid including irrelevancies that may distract readers' attentions. Then acknowledgement. Record the names and designation of the people involved. Particular reference should be given to stakeholders, followed by others who have helped. Then you must write the terms of reference that were agreed. This should be stated as agreed with the stakeholders, whose names and designation should be included. Now note, any changes made during the assignment that should come in the report. So if you did any changes, then you must make a reference of them. Then comes the main text. This is the most important part of the report. Organize in an accessible way so that people can easily reach it. Well presented and easy to read. And use main headings and subheadings to highlight significant features or chapters of the text. Link headings or subheadings to specific performance issues, functions, working groups, or stakeholders. People may only reach those parts of the report directly relevant to them. So it will not waste their time. They can quickly go to it and see what is there in it for them. Explain the process you have used along with your findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Describe significant issues to which you wish to draw attention rather than the tools you have used. Include details of tools in appendix. That is actually an additional thing. Like if people want to know how you did that, how you draw that, how did you come to that conclusion, you should use the tools in the appendix. Then you must have an executive summary of one or more or one or more than 1.5 page. Like you can have 2 pages too, and done after the main section has been compiled, not before. So executive summary should follow the main text. Then appendices. They are also known as attachments or annexures or exhibits. They allow you to cater for a variety of readers. Keep the main text as concise as possible, with details presented separately, where they will not interfere with the main flow of the report. appendices can include completed EOT tools, data, and information obtained from interviews or even filled in questionnaires. Appendices can be referred to as C Appendix A, or details are shown in Appendix B. You can cross-reference them also. Normally, appendices are designated by letter rather than numbers. So you can write Appendix A, Appendix B, C, etc. When we write annexures, then they are 1, 2, 3, and so on. Then numbering. Cross-referencing is an advantage. A standard number notation should be used. If you're using Roman numbers, then use Roman numbers everywhere. Otherwise, Arabic numerals, they are also good enough. The most common system is paragraph numbering. Number the paragraphs and sub-number them also. So each paragraph has a sequential number starting with 1 and carrying on through the text. The advantage of this system is that any paragraph can easily be identified and located, and thus discussed at meetings or by telephone or emailed. Numbering is best done after the main text is done and a summary or recommendation has been drafted. So do the numbering as the last step. So thank you, friends, for listening to me. And that is all I wanted to share today with you. If you have any questions, then stop the share, stop sharing the screen, and then I will be available. So yeah. So
ma'am, hello, am I audible? Ma'am, there are 2 questions for assignments. Can we have 10 minutes for that discussion, ma'am? Assignment questions.
If that is necessary, you just ask the question. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Okay, ma'am. This is first question is, in your organization, they would have conducted a training program for the newly joined middle level managers. To evaluate the outcome of the training conducted, which model of the evaluation was being used? Elaborate this in details covering all 3 stages.
Are you reading from a question paper?
Repeat. Huh?
No. The question is, which model should be used?
Yes.
And in what 3 stages? Is it so?
Yes.
Actually, you can suggest any of the models that we have earlier discussed, but I think Kirkpatrick model is the most popular model, and doing the 4th level evaluation is really tough. So easily you can focus on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level.
Oh, okay, ma'am. We have to use only the first 3 levels only. That's enough.
I didn't say that. If you want to use the 4th level, then the whole scenario changes. The whole tools, the entire set of tools changes. It's your choice. But it is easier to do it on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level. That is what I'm saying.
Question is
Actually, the answer is supposed to be by you. There's no model answer to this question, you know. You have to frame the answer, but depending upon your understanding. Okay?
Okay.
It will be easy if you choose the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
Okay, ma'am. The second question is, for a training program conducted for a group of 40 trainers in your company, that may be supervisors or managers or workers, trainers or technicians, whichever is relevant to your work. Identify the following for calculating the return on investment of that program. First, levels. Second, strategies. Third, techniques. Fourth, statistical or analytical methods you propose to make use for analyzing the data. Return on investment of that.
Yeah, it is a return on investment question. And since they have not provided you any data, they have only said that it is for 40 people and they're new recruits, it seems, isn't it? Is it so? Can you repeat the first part? I've forgotten what you said.
For a training program conducted for a group of 40 trainers in your company.
Trainers,
that is
trainers.
Supervisors, managers or workers or trainers or
techniques. They're trainees, they are a mixed group, supervisors, managers and?
Not mixed, ma'am. Any of them. That is supervisors or managers or workers or trainers or technicians. Whichever is relevant.
There will be only one level, either supervisors or trainees, so you can choose from them. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And what
then identify Then identify the following for calculating ROI of that program. Levels, strategies, techniques, statistical or analytical methods you propose to make use for analyzing the data.
For the first part, the level, it has
Yes.
to be level 3 because otherwise you cannot measure the outcome of the training, or it could be level 4. So you can suggest either of them or both of them, and then the tools could be the like the tools could be any model that you may take. You can take the Kirkpatrick model or any other model, and then tools, techniques or tools. Actually, this is a mixed thing kind of thing. So you can use questionnaires, interviews, and I have talked about a number of tools earlier, activity sampling, etc. You can explain them, and then you, in the last step, you explain the 7 steps in the ROI model that we have discussed. So that is how you will go about calculating the ROI. Since they have not given you data for that, so you cannot really calculate the ROI, but you can suggest the way that you will go about calculating the ROI. Does it make sense?
That's for the last question, ma'am. Statistical method, that is the 7 steps, ma'am.
No. Statistical methods, I don't think I have discussed with you. I have discussed the return on investment. There's a PowerPoint also available, which I have made available, I think, in the last to last session. And there are 7 steps that the Jack J. Phillips suggests for conducting the ROI. So that is what you need to use here. Does that answer your question? So any other question from any other student? Or any more questions? I have 2 chats here. Raghavendra Singh said, thank you. Thank you, Raghavendra, and all the best to you. And Sandhya also said, thank you. Thank you, Sandhya. So can we call it a day now? Are the questions over, or you still have any more questions? Okay, then I think I will take leave. You can also email to me, and you can also email through the ISTD forum, and I will email this PowerPoint also to you. Okay, and ISTD people will give it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.